you, Barry, and it's a pleasure to be communicating with all of you, and thank you for tuning in for our webinar. I've been to Antarctica over 10 times, and it's one of the greatest trips of my life, but equally marvelous is the cruise in New Zealand. And I just want people to know, whether you've been to Antarctica or not, how special this trip is and how it complements the Antarctica trip perfectly, because many of the birds you see there and animals will be different than you saw in Antarctica. But like Antarctica, it has, in fact, even more than Antarctica, the greatest seabirding in the world. We saw on our trip, we've seen as many as 12 species of albatross, while on our Antarctica trips, as marvelous as they are, we see 6 species of albatross. It is the greatest seabirding in the world with both the albatross and the other birds. And in both of these regions, one of the birds that all of us have been intrigued by since we were probably children are penguins. And there are 4 species of penguins in New Zealand that are found nowhere else in the world. In fact, penguins probably evolved. The first penguins that evolved were probably in New Zealand. So this trip is a perfect complement to Antarctica if you've been to Antarctica. If you haven't been to Antarctica, New Zealand is a great place to start. In addition to the seabirds and the wonderful scenery, it has more land birds that we see because it's not quite as far south as some of the islands we go to in Antarctica. And there are trees, and in it there are things like bellbirds and saddlebacks and other special birds found nowhere else in the world. And another advantage about New Zealand, some people are a little worried about Antarctica because we can encounter very rough seas, particularly crossing the famous Drake Passage. Although there can be certain periods in New Zealand where you have some rough seas, nothing like we sometimes encounter in Antarctica. And so it's a very pleasant, very delightful trip. It's a fascinating country to visit. It has fantastic scenery, fantastic birding, and I highly recommend our trip to New Zealand, and Barry will be telling you more about the route and some of the special islands we go to.
All right, well, thank you, Victor. Okay, so what we want to do, because this part of the world is not familiar to many travelers, we thought we would start by taking you through the cruise route and then giving a broader explanation of where exactly these places are. And on this map, you can see that Queenstown, right in the center of the South Island of New Zealand, South Center, is where this trip starts. We embark the ship in Milford Sound, and we cruise around the whole south end of the South Island over to Dunedin on the southeast coast of New Zealand, and then we make this big transit through this section of the Southern Ocean, going down to Campbell Island, straight across west to Macquarie Island, back to the Auckland Islands, north to the Snares, and then for a grand finale, we go into Fjordland National Park in the southwestern coast of New Zealand. And these island archipelagos are what really are the focus of the trip. But what makes this trip extra special is that we will have a chance to sample Fjordland National Park, which is really famous for its spectacular scenery and wildlife. And so that was more of a specific look at the trip, but I want to provide an overview here also, because when you hear the name Subantarctic Islands of New Zealand, that just isn't, for a lot of people, that isn't clear where this area is. And so if you're looking at this screen here, I want to direct you to the right side. You're looking at the continent of Antarctica here. And off to the right, you can see the tip of South America, Chile and Argentina coming down, and the big long peninsula off of Antarctica, which is called the Antarctic Peninsula, projecting north. That is the region where the majority of travelers who go into the Southern Ocean go. And the Weddell Sea, of course, the Antarctic Peninsula, that is the place where most people who go into that region go. Now, all the way over to the left side, where you can see New Zealand sitting there north of Antarctica, in between, those waters in between what I have labeled the Subantarctic New Zealand. This is the area where this trip will operate. And when we talk about subantarctic, what we're talking about is the area immediately above the Antarctic region. And so it's kind of counterintuitive, because you're talking about the southern latitudes. These are lower degrees of latitude than if you were to go all the way to Antarctica, which is where this term sub comes from, Subantarctic Islands of New Zealand. And right up above the letter U in sub is in particular where these places are, the Auckland Islands, Macquarie Island, Campbell Island, etc. So for anybody who might be geographically challenged, hopefully this will help you. But anyway, so back to our map. Once we embark the ship and come around the south side of New Zealand, our first stop is going to be Stewart Island. And Stewart Island, and in particular Ulva Island, it's a remarkable place because so much of New Zealand's endemic native bird life has disappeared for a variety of reasons, which I won't launch into here. But the New Zealand Department of Conservation has done some extraordinary work in preserving some of these islands and maintaining populations of rare and endangered birds. And so even before we get into the true subantarctic islands, we've got this very special stop on this island, and we have listed some of the birds that you can expect to see here. And also, one reason why we really like this slide is because it also imparts a feel for what the native plant community is like, big tree ferns and hardwoods. But some of the birds that you would expect to see are things like the New Zealand pigeon, the New Zealand bellbird, which is a wonderful singing bird that's pictured here in the top left, and of course the beautiful red-crowned parakeet down on the lower right. What you're looking at here is sort of a typical beach scene, very beautiful big brown sandy beaches, and we do have a chance to walk in the forest and also along the beach. And again, here are some of these things that you would expect to see. The tui on the top left, the New Zealand pigeon, the oyster catcher down below at the bottom, the South Island oyster catcher, and then the weka in the lower left. So again, even though we really are excited about the subantarctic quality to this trip, this opportunity to see these rare and endangered land birds are what give this trip an added bonus here. And so from Stewart Island, what we will do is wrap around up to Dunedin. And I don't have any slides of Dunedin with me today, but one of the real attractions of this trip is a chance to go out to Tairoa Head, which is where the colony of northern royal albatross nests. And this colony was made famous by the research of Lance Brigsdale back decades ago. And it's given that it's on the New Zealand mainland and that it's easily accessible, that's a very famous place. And travelers that are on this voyage with us will have a chance to go there and access it. From Dunedin, we will re-embark the ship and cruise south into the Southern Ocean, toward the Southern Ocean, and our first stop is going to be at Campbell Island. Now, Campbell Island is an extraordinary conservation story because the New Zealand Department of Conservation rid this island of all the introduced non-native predators, principally rats. And it was an extraordinary feat. At the time, it was the largest island that had ever been eradicated of non-native pests. And again, looking at this lineup of birds that we've listed here, these are just some of the attractions of going to Campbell Island. But also this landscape before you here in this slide shows you what you're going to expect. These are megaherbs, the plants in the near ground, but also you're getting a look at these windswept moorlands and the sea beyond. In the near ground on the left is a boardwalk, and this boardwalk is important because it allows access into the center of the island. And as typically we have a full day here, and here is a representation of some of the things that there are to see at Campbell Island. In particular, the little Campbell Island teal, which is the duck in the bottom left corner of the screen here, which was a bird that at one time was thought to be extinct or very close to extinction before its rediscovery in the mid-1970s. Without rats, this bird has made an extraordinary comeback, and your chances of seeing this bird, I would call them very high. And in addition, in the lower right there, you see this nesting royal albatross. And what is so neat about this is that for people who go to Antarctica, as I was describing before, one of the real attractions of that trip is a chance to see the wandering albatross nesting. On this trip, you have a chance to see the royal albatross nesting. And there are two varieties, southern royal and northern royal, and New Zealand is the only place that you can see that. And so that alone makes it special, but again, it's the opportunity to see all these things that are found nowhere else, including this Campbell Island shag in the top left corner of the screen here. And here we go. This is an image of one of the big sweeping vistas. This was an image that I took several years ago when I was on the second of two voyages to Campbell Island, the Subantarctic. And also, you look in the near ground, you can see this royal albatross.
When I went, this is Victor, when I went to Campbell Island the first time with Greg Lasley, it was before the rats were eradicated. And there were no Campbell Island teal. There were no pipits on the island. And then when I went back after the rats had been removed, I remember how exciting it was to be on the ship and get the message over the radio that there were several Campbell Island teal right at the dock where the Zodiac was going to let us off. And what a thrill to see a bird that had believed to be extinct. The bird had only survived on one little rocky island. It was a pinnacle of rocks, not a very good nesting area for it, but they didn't even know they were there. They found them on that rocky island, and as soon as the rats were removed, the teal on their own came back to Campbell Island because they were looking for a place to nest. So what a thrill to see this flightless teal that's come back.
Yeah, and you know, all of these things combine for a wonderful effect, really. And if you look at this image, I mean, this island is totally uninhabited, and this is very primeval. This is the native plant community here, totally undamaged, totally restored, and seeing these albatross, which along with the wandering albatross are the largest albatrosses in the world. And so while you're looking at this, you can actually approach these albatrosses to within very close range and really just have a chance to admire them while they sit placidly on their nest. It's really quite a thing. From Campbell Island, we will make a crossing due west to Macquarie Island. And one of the things that some of our listeners might not be aware of is that even though this trip spends its time in New Zealand, of course, as the name of the trip would imply, Macquarie Island is actually an Australian-held territory. It belongs to Australia, and but nevertheless, it is a very subantarctic island. And elephant seals at close range. This is what Macquarie Island holds for those that are that have a chance to make the trip. Now, in this slide, here's a representation of the different penguin species that nest on Macquarie Island. Of course, you've got the beautiful king penguins, the 3-foot-tall king penguins off to the left. But the lower right is, here we have pictured royal penguins. And the royal penguin only breeds in these islands, these subantarctic islands of New Zealand, and Macquarie is their primary stronghold. So when you go there, you will have a chance to see colonies of these things, colonies of king penguins, and then in addition, there are lesser numbers of the beautiful Gentoo penguin, which here on the top right is you see an adult bird with a chick. Other things to see at Macquarie Island are the endemic Macquarie Island shag, a special cormorant that does not breed anywhere else. It's not found anywhere else. In addition, this is a breeding ground for southern giant petrels, and there are a couple of them here. Above that, you see some people zodiac cruising just offshore here in the protected channels and so on. And again, here is what you would expect to see should you join us on this trip. You walk along the beach, and there's just legions of king penguins, these beautiful king penguins. Interspersed among them are southern elephant seals of varying size. Females and young ones make up the bulk of the animals that you see, but you can see some males in the background up higher up. And there is a research station that most travelers to Macquarie get to visit. And again, this offers a sweep of the vegetation in a restored state. Very impressive. Now, from Macquarie Island, we head back to the Auckland Islands. And before we discuss the Aucklands, though, I do want to point out that another one of this trip's attractions is the opportunity to be seeing all these birds at sea. So, you know, you're visiting these islands and you're seeing the birds and other wildlife of the islands. But this trip has 3 lengthy sea crossings. The first one from Dunedin to Campbell, the second from Campbell to Macquarie, the third from Macquarie to the Auckland Islands. And these stretches of water are some of the richest waters for seabirding in the world. And so going up, joining your tour leaders, the Zegrahm expedition staff on deck watching for birds and other wildlife is a real thrill because the diversity is so high, you just never know what you're going to see. For example,
white-headed petrels, which I'd only seen a few in Antarctica, which you see in one of these slides that Barry's going to put up. But that first trip I did with Barry, on the trip we had Peter Harrison, who did the wonderful Guide to the Seabirds of the World, and he was doing paintings to completely revise in a few years to update that guide with new paintings. And Peter, who's one of the greatest aficionados he is, the greatest lover of seabirds ever, was tremendously excited to be back in these waters. He loves these waters because of the seabirds.
Yes, and so, you know, right here is a slide representing just some of the albatross species. And, you know, here you have a chance, on this trip, you have a chance to see as many as 12 species or subspecies of albatrosses. I have them listed here on the left, you know, 3 types of wanderings, 2 royals, 2 black-broweds, and then these other ones as well. And it is just such a thrill to be out there on the deck and not knowing what you're going to see because there's so much action around you. But over the course of the trip, you will see most, if not all, of these birds. And as Victor had just referenced, there are some petrel species in addition to the albatross. There's other seabirds, including the beautiful white-headed petrel, which is featured top center. These are my shots. Some of them are better than others, but nevertheless, they give a good feel for what else you might see out here. The black-bellied storm petrel on the lower left, several species of prions, the little petrel-like birds that are quite diverse. You see, this trip usually produces at least 3 varieties pictured top left. And of course, on the top right is the beautiful Cape petrel, which fortunately accompanies the ship throughout most of the voyage. You see them most days, and it's really a wonderful bird, and we generally have good luck with them. And all these other things, a soft plumage petrel in the lower bottom center, and then in the lower right, the gray-faced petrel. These are just examples of the variety out there. But anyway, our next stop, getting back on the route here, our next stop is going to be the Auckland Islands. And the Auckland is a sizable archipelago, but at the northern end in particular is Enderby Island, which is a fascinating place. It's generally speaking, for travelers who visit the Subantarctic, Enderby is among the favorite activities of the trip because, like all these other islands, the non-native predators have been largely removed, and there's just a combination of birds, scenery, and botanical community is really wonderful to experience. And what happens here, you know, again, I've got some of the special birds that you might see here on the island listed, but this photograph shows some people on this boardwalk. And with the ship anchored out in the harbor, the boardwalk extends from the beach just about and crosses the island, so you get a real feel, real cross-section for what Enderby Island is all about. And these are some of the things, some of the sights of Enderby. Some of the real highlights are more nesting royal albatrosses. Down on the lower left, you've got the yellow-eyed penguin, which is only found in the Subantarctics. And I guess there is a colony on the South Island of New Zealand as well. But this is really the premier place to see this beautiful bird. And you know, many of these penguins are closely related to one another, but the yellow-eyed is very distinct and is sort of its own thing. The Auckland Island shag up on the top left, an endemic bird. And then on the lower right, the New Zealand sea lion, also known as Hooker's sea lion, which is the largest sea lion in the world. And then on the top right, the Auckland Islands teal, like the Campbell Islands teal. This is a flightless bird found nowhere else in the world. And your chances of seeing these things are high indeed. And this is I'm not going to pause too long here on these slides. I just want to give you an impression of what the approach is like to Enderby Island, the big beach. On the top left slide with the beach, it shows the landing beach and the Zodiac. The Zodiac's going back and forth. And once you ascend into the center of the island, this is what you're greeted with. These beautiful, extensive moorlands. In the lower right, you can see the boardwalk that accesses the interior, designed to keep this fragile plant community from getting damaged. And then you get into this rata forest, these spelled R-A-T-A, this very special tree community. And in and around it are a variety of special birds: the bellbird, the top left, the tomtit, the lower left, and the subantarctic snipe, which is an endangered bird that lives in the grasses on the island, and then the red-fronted parakeet as well. But you know, and of course, it isn't just about birds. There are other things to see, and these subantarctic islands are famous for their so-called megaherбs, these giant, these gigantic plants that produce these beautiful flowers, and the rata forest again. From the Auckland Islands, for the trip's grand finale, we will head north. As we begin the trip north, we will make a stop in the Snares Islands, because this is the only place in the world to see the endemic Snares penguin. This little collection, this little cluster of islands, is the only place to see this bird. From the Snares, you can see that the ship makes an arcing route back up to Fjordland, back up to South Island, where we will go to Fjordland National Park. And in this region, really just sort of exquisite natural scenery. This imparts a feel for that. Dusky and Doubtful sounds. In particular, this is where Captain Cook voyaged, the first to ever set foot on New Zealand. There are a number of birds that we may see from the ship, but at this point, this is certainly as much about the scenery as it is the birds. Here are some of the special things that we might see. The little penguin in the top left, and then the top right, we have a chance to see the Fjordland penguin, or Fjordland crested penguin. There may be some of them around, other species of cormorants. And you know, this image here is typical of what you would expect to see: beautiful, protected, clear waters, forest coming down to the coast. Here is a picture at dawn in this same region of Dusky and Doubtful sounds. More scenery, and you can see as we work our way up back toward Milford Sound, you see these snow-capped peaks in the distance, these tranquil waters. And then finally, for the grand finale, we enter Milford Sound. Postcard, picturesque, perfect scenery. The snow peaks, these narrow serrated ridges, remnant snow, and of course these plunging waterfalls like Stillman Falls, I think it's called. And you know, so you are confronted with this scenery in grandiose proportions, really. You know, the ship is often brought right up to the face of the falls. It's a beautiful sight. Disembarking the ship, we go back to Queenstown on a bus. We make several stops up in the mountains, what's called the Southern Alps, And this is the kind of scenery that you're exposed to. And you know, these high alpine meadows with snow, waterfalls, it's just glorious scenery, really photogenic stuff. With a few opportunities for more birding in here. This area in particular is known for as a site to see the very rare South Island rock wren. And again, I mean, just beautiful scenery in really impressive proportions here. Some of the sites that you'll see, wildflowers, the parrot, the kaka, we generally see that as we exit the mountains. And of course, a final stop for lunch at Teanau. The town of Teanau will often produce sightings of black-billed gulls, which is a much more range-restricted bird than the red-billed gulls and other species that we'll see. And so, you know, if you're wondering about what travel is like, you know, I'm really excited to talk about this because Zegrahm Expeditions has some of the very best adventure cruise ships in the industry, and the Caledonian Sky is a spectacular ship. It's got all the amenities. It's comfortable. It's beautiful. It's well done, and it makes a voyage to these southern waters especially alluring. And if you notice here, where I have the ship labeled as 100 guests, that gives you an idea of what you have in store in terms of having the intimacy of a small group experience, as opposed to one of these ships that takes 2,000, 3,000 passengers. You're purely in the company of other like-minded travelers, and a ship of this size very comfortably accommodates 100 passengers. And a little closer up view of the ship. Here in the top left, you've got one of the ship's public areas, the lounge. Down below, the dining room. The top right, here's one of the viewing decks. And so, you know, while you're at sea, you've got plenty of room to move around, to see the birds, other marine life that we may encounter on some of our inter-island voyages. The bottom right is here's an example of one of the staterooms. So really quite a lovely presentation. It makes the trip there all the more enjoyable. And here we are. You know, this trip will be here's where we announce the trip. The dates, January 17th through February the 3rd, 2017. And this trip will be led by a longtime Vent leader, David Wolf. David has been with Vent for many years. He's one of our most experienced tour leaders, one of our most widespread travelers.
David practically started the company with me. He's been with us almost from the beginning. He's extremely popular. He's wonderful at answering questions. He's extremely knowledgeable. And he'll be working with Brent Stevenson from Zegrahm Expeditions, who's also an expert on New Zealand birds. So you're going to have two great leaders. One of them will be on the deck almost all the time to help you with the seabirds, to answer questions. There are other members of the staff that will talk about the history of New Zealand, other aspects of the landscape, the geology, the other aspects, giving lectures on the ship. And what I want people to know that this trip is not offered every year. It may be at least 3 or 4 years before we can offer it again, because not many companies charter a ship to go to these islands. And so I hope you can take advantage of this opportunity. We only have 3 cabins left of the lower price category, the lower category of prices on the ship. And Zegrahm is offering this $1,000 air credit for people that sign up for this trip. And so we hope that you will take advantage of this, because, as I say, it may be several years before there'll be another opportunity to go to this area that I think is one of the great cruises of the world.
And so if you're interested, we would love to have you join us. And for more information or to register, please contact our office. Greg Lopez and his assistant Patrick Swaggerty manage this trip with for us, for Vent, and we hope to see you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Barry and Victor. This is Lisa from Zegrahm Expeditions. One of the things I did want to mention about the fairs is, yes, we have opened up 3 lower categories for specifically for the Vent group. And then also keep in mind that these fairs are all inclusive. So everything except for the air. You will not touch your wallet once you land in the airport. That includes transfers to the hotel, pre and post the trip, all of your gratuities, all of your shore events, everything on board, beer and wine with meals. So I don't see any specific questions come up, but I do invite you to contact Greg or Patrick with their emails there, and they can answer specific questions. And unless there's any other things that you wanted to say, Victor or Barry, we can call it a day.
I would like to say to people that are listening to this, if for some reason it doesn't work out that you can go, please let friends know, because this is such a special opportunity. Let friends know we're interested in birds and travel and a first-class cruise. Let them know about this opportunity. We would appreciate that.
And I would also like to add that one of the more recent developments that we've in collaboration with Zegrahm, we are able to offer a special, extra special departure at the very beginning of the trip, where we have a day in Queenstown, a chance to go out to the Mackenzie Basin to see the beautiful black stilt, which is an endemic shorebird found only in New Zealand. And that was not part of the original program, but that's what we wanted, and we wanted to add it, and Zegrahm very graciously was able to make that happen. So our travelers will have a chance to enjoy that added activity.
I want to thank everybody for their attention today, and Victor, Barry, we will be in touch soon. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.